No, I think Sarah's okay on Zoom. Can you do it? Type in the chat and do a thumbs up, maybe. Just want to make sure you all can hear us okay. And then, yeah, we have you all unmuted, but when we do questions and answers towards the end, we'll have you be able to chat in the comments. Great. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate that confirmation. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. We're gonna get started here in 1 minute. Yeah. All right. Oh, did my bell just break? Okay, good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Nastasia Olson with Travel Oregon. You are at a Riverfront Reimagined Recreation Ready meeting. So if you're meant to be in the Oregon Wine Board meeting, that's over there. So can everyone hear me okay? I'll try to kind of talk loudly, but just to make sure. And yeah, we do have quite a few folks on Zoom today. So wave to your friends on Zoom. We will also be recording the meeting today, so we'll be able to share that later and have that be a reference for folks who maybe weren't able to attend today to be able to, provide feedback later and whatnot if they would like to. So, yeah, and so before I kick it over to Katie with Taste Newberg, the lead of the project with the steering committee currently, just kind of wanted to set the context a little bit of like why we're here today and why Travel Oregon's involved. So yeah, why we're here. Really, we wanted to bring this project idea forward to the community. Sometimes we've found when working on visitor experience development projects at Travel Oregon, we've seen that projects can get kind of really get going and brought to the community sometimes a little bit later on when they're more in the design phase, or sometimes it doesn't always feel wonderful to folks. So we wanted to make sure that we were bringing the community in to kind of get your feedback and learn about this really early phase project concept. So I just want to say we are at like step 0. This thing is, in its infancy, and we're here to try to help it move forward, and assuming the, community is supportive. And so we wanted you to have an opportunity to meet the folks behind it, again, like kind of meet us, our team at Travel Oregon, and the consultants who are working on it, and then meet the steering committee who applied to the Recreation Ready program to help get the project off the ground. Gather as a community with you all, eat some food, share a meal. And then really we want you all to be able to ask questions and to be heard, and we really want to capture your feedback. So we'll do that towards the end of the meeting, and then we also have a couple different ways we can capture your feedback as well. So any questions with that first? Everyone knows why we're here? Okay, great. So yeah, so to meet the team, like I said, I'm Nastasia Olson, or Staj is my nickname. I'm with Travel Oregon. I'm a destination services manager on our stewardship department. And we've got some other folks with us here today. So I'm just gonna have them raise their hands and quickly I'll say who they are. Yes, this is Fabiana. She's new to our team. We're very excited to bring her on as a coordinator, helping us really support these types of events and the work we do all over the state. We've got Chris Bernhardt today, who you'll be hearing a little bit from shortly. He's one of our consultants with C2 Recreation. And we've got Ashley Schaefer, owner of Empowering Access, also a consultant working with us very closely on this program. And again, you'll get to hear from her later today too. And then we've got Vanessa Tharp in the background. She's our amazing event and community engagement consultant that really helps us bring a lot of these types of programming and events to life around the state. So thank you, Vanessa, for helping us have food and whatnot. So yeah, okay, so just a teeny bit of background about Travel Oregon and who we are, and who these consultants are working for. Is anyone familiar with Travel Oregon or heard of them? Okay, great. So yeah, so we are we are the Oregon Tourism Commission. We do business as Travel Oregon. We are a semi-independent state agency that was formed in 2003. We serve as the state's official destination marketing organization, and we are funded by a 1.5% statewide lodging tax. So, when you stay at a hotel or a short-term rental or a campground, there's a 1.5% tax, and that funds our agency and our programming and our grant programs and all of that. And we have a 9-member board of commissioners that are appointed by the governor that oversee our strategic plan and budget and our staff team. Yeah, and so at Travel Oregon, our mission is beyond just trying to, get travelers to travel around and spend money in communities. That is a big part of it. We were traditionally created as an economic development agency, but really our mission, I believe, goes beyond that. It's not only about, it's really about uplifting Oregon communities at the end of the day. And so collaborating with our stakeholders and our partners and doing this type of work to really help create those economic opportunities, but also to advance equity and respect the ecosystems and the environment and the places and the communities that we're, doing tourism within, and really to help respect and make Oregon and support you all. And so, like I said, what this means is while we are an economic development agency, we really have a triple bottom line approach where we're really working to balance those economic goals with the local community and with people that make up these special places and with the environment that supports that. Okay, and so some of the ways we do this work and live into our mission and to help make the mission come to life is really by running programs, right? So this is a new program, Recreation Ready. We launched this in late 2024 with the vision to provide community projects that with feasibility planning, technical assistance, and funding really to help support rural communities in developing some new outdoor recreation experiences. Again, that not only help contribute to tourists and visitors coming in to experience your places and to hopefully, frequenting your restaurants and your wineries and your hotels and your arts and culture, but also really for the locals as well and for all of you. And so this program is run over 2 distinct phases. Phase 1 is really what the project is in right now. So like I said, like phase 0, we are just looking at the project and assessing feasibility. Like, does this even work? Does this make sense? We're doing this through convening a steering committee, which you'll learn about in a minute, identifying the opportunities and considerations. We're performing a disability and inclusion evaluation with Ashley. We are engaging the community. That's what we're doing here today and getting some feedback. And then we are providing action planning and recommendations to then go into phase 2 to receive what we're calling phase 2 funding, assuming the project's feasible. It's up to $100,000 initially to really kind of kickstart the next steps of the project. And so, yeah, so why river tourism, right? So there's been this first cohort actually of the Recreation Ready program. It's because it's a pretty intensive program and we're doing a lot of supporting the communities and kind of digging deep into the project. There's only 4 in each cohort every year that get accepted into the program. So you were one of 4 communities across the state. So congratulations. And yeah, yours was the only project really actually related to like river access and water recreation. We just had someone join us on Zoom. And so just a couple quick things I want to share why we thought this project was so amazing and wanted to support it is Oregon is really like known for rivers. We have over 110,000 miles of river in Oregon. We have more national wild and scenic designated rivers than any other state in the nation, which is pretty amazing. And It aligns with Oregon's competitive tourism lures. We're already really known for agritourism, like culinary and food tourism, cultural heritage, of course, outdoor recreation, and really scenic drives. Are like key tourism lures that people are frequenting and doing when they're here and what Oregon's known for. Physical activity promotes physical and mental health opportunities and really is valued at $1.4 billion in health insurance savings in Oregon just in 2019. So it really also uplifts and supports our communities, again, in a myriad of ways. Freshwater recreation activities in Oregon in 2019 accounted for $1.83 billion in economic activity. And again, that's just looking at freshwater. That's not including like ocean activities in Oregon, like fishing on the coast and whatnot. And then freshwater fishing alone in the United States across all users, across all people, participation is the top 5 activity, outdoor recreation activity that people participate in. And I believe that has been in the top 5 for over like decades. So people love water and want to access water. And paddleboarding specifically and flatwater kayaking, which I think are, things that we really want to do with this project and have people have the opportunity and access to do that, have been 2 of the top, like fastest growing outdoor recreation activities by participation rate growing across the entire US. So there's a lot of like demand and there's a lot of need for access to do that kind of activity. So great. Okay, so with that, I really want to kick it over to Katie and the rest of the presentation. Okay.
And then,
Just click forward.
okay, great.
And then you can see.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Katie McFall. I'm with Taste Newberg, and so we are the City of Newberg's destination marketing organization, and we were the primary applicant for the project. And then I want to take a moment to introduce the rest of the steering committee that's been involved in the project throughout. So I'll have each of you stand up. James, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm one of the planners at Liddy, do some curb. Long range planning.
And Brian.
I'm Brian Stewart. I'm the park supervisor with Cheyenne Park and Rec. Fortunate enough to be one of the steering committee members also.
And then Travis.
Travis Beats, the Edinburgh Parks Manager.
Yeah, and so each of these members has been really engaged throughout the process through the application period, as well as meeting about every other week to talk about the project and the direction that we want to go, because all of these entities have some piece of land or land management or part tied to the river. And I want to talk a little bit now about the project overview, about who we are as Taste Newberg, the background of the project, and then where we're looking to go. So first and foremost, Taste Newberg is, like I mentioned, the City of Newberg's destination marketing organization. We are funded through lodging tax that is collected within the City of Newberg limits, and we receive a portion of that that is collected. So just for some clarity about what is a visitor and what is a tourist and what does that mean to us. So a visitor is someone that comes from over 50 miles away or also stays overnight. So that is kind of the definition that Travel Oregon and us as partners use as tourism entities to talk about visitation. And the other piece to that is that we are a small local little DMO is what we call them, destination marketing organizations, but we work with regional partners as well as Travel Oregon. And so it's a whole tourism ecosystem within the state that we try to leverage different opportunities and really make sure our destination is continuing to work with partners to try to elevate what's happening here at the local level. So our goal is to stimulate the local economy, like Saj has mentioned, that we are an economic driver, and that is really important to our mission and our goal of what we do. One of my goals in my role at Taste Newberg is to grow our destination. So we are situated in wine country, which is an amazing asset, but we also want visitors to come, stay longer, and to participate in different types of amenities and opportunities that are here locally. So that's really where developing wine plus activities comes into play, is that outdoor recreation, culinary, arts and heritage, all of those things really drive visitor traffic and also bring in different types of visitors. And our goal really with projects like this is to increase local livability, right? If we have increased river access, if we have more amenities, that's great for the local population, but it's also great for the visitor economy as well, because we're able to pitch those things and to really build and grow a destination. So from the visitor perspective, I kind of wanted to do a little bit about the visitor perspective as to why this project came to be, and then a local perspective. So from the visitor perspective, we want visitors to come and stay for longer. So visitors that come, if they stay, 1 to 2 nights, maybe they can stay 3 to 4 nights and experience something on the river or participate in a different type of amenity here. We also want to draw different types of visitors. So as we continue to grow and the wine industries here, we want to start attracting different types of visitors that are coming to our destination that offer different types of economic development here. And then also just a little bit of a caveat is understanding that building a destination takes a long time. These types of projects can have, take many, many years to really come to fruition. And that's really how we look at things, is growing things over the course of many, many years to really grow and build a destination. So from the local perspective, we have seen numerous studies that are done here in Yamhill County at the local level that talk about how local residents are really interested in increased river recreation opportunities or abilities to recreate in different types of way along the river. That can look like a numerous different things. That can look like paddling, fishing, scenic viewing, that can mean a lot of different things to people. So when we've done surveys and we've seen surveys that have been done by Parks Department, that is a huge demand that local residents have, and we want to fill that demand. The other thing is that our area's actually lost some river access. And so that with the increased demand and then also losing access, we would like to have those things be more imbalanced. And our goal through this is to really identify a site or evaluate different sites that have potential opportunities. So there may be sites that are owned publicly that may not be feasible to do any type of river development in our area. And so we wanted to look at the holistic picture to say, what are all those sites and how do we narrow it down to areas of opportunity? So our project goals, Staj kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'll just run through these, is to identify areas of opportunity through feasibility analysis. Through that is kind of a SWOT analysis of the strengths, opportunities, weakness, evaluating where those are kind of itemized, and then integrate the community feedback. So we're here today talking a little bit about the process and looking to get feedback that can then be integrated into a plan. We then want to create an action plan. So as you know, there's a lot of plans that are created that sit on a shelf for 20, 30 years. And so our goal is to really make it actionable and digestible for small pieces to move forward that we can all work together to achieve. And then begin implementation of the action plan, which would be part of phase 2, which is where that additional funding would be coming from. So now I want to introduce Michelle Kaufman from Stoller Wine Group. She'll come up and she'll chat a little bit about how, river access and that development really also benefits the wine industry and other industries in our area. There you go, Michelle.
Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Travel Oregon. Thanks, gang, for hosting us. I'm Michelle Kaufman, Vice President of Communications at the Stoller Wine Group. We are a collection of family-owned wineries operating 3 businesses here in Yamhill County. I'm sure most of you know that the prime economic drivers here in Yamhill County have always been agriculture and manufacturing. Still true today, except for we are growing wine grapes and we are manufacturing wine. And we have a third really critical piece to our business, which is tourism. Sorry, just some notes to keep this, keep me on track. But we need more than just wine here, right? Like wine alone doesn't create a happy, healthy, thriving community. We need more shops. We need more things for people to do. All of that helps deliver a stronger economic development, not only for us locals, but also for that visitor economy. Because when people do come here, as Katie was saying, they stay longer, they spend more, we make more, everyone is happy.
Outdoor rec, as I think you guys know, is the #1 reason that people come to visit Oregon, and then they discover all of the other amazing things that we do. And right now, activities like the potential river development that we're talking about really does fill a gap that we have here in our community. And I think that that's why I'm excited about it. I was talking with some of my friends at the Oregon Wine Board that are having a meeting across the hall. They didn't know this were happening. And one of them who actually lives here in Yamhill County was like, "Ooh, I just got chills. That could be really awesome for my own family." So yeah, having a resource like what's being proposed helps elevate Newberg. It elevates the county as a whole and really helps us create and get more demand with Travel Oregon with their destination programming, and ultimately gives us a larger voice so that we can say how programs like this use and benefit us as a community and then the tourist. One of our businesses, I mentioned that we have 3, is here in the Newberg downtown core, Stoller Wine Bar Newberg. So we need a happy, healthy, thriving downtown, vibrant economy. It's vital to our success, but it's also vital to our community success. And that's, again, why I'm really excited about what's being proposed. And I love that we're at phase 0 so that we can be a part of this conversation as it's happening and help shape it to fit our needs. We got to work together and help create this ecosystem for visitors and us alike. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Katie. That's super helpful, and it's very important. We want to be clear that this is a project brought to this community from the community. You'll see a bunch of consultants in the room from Portland area, right? We're here to assist the community in this effort. We're not driving this effort at all. So we're almost done talking at you. All right. Okay. We've got a couple more minutes talking at you. Hopefully it's interesting. And then we'll begin to engage in conversations with you. And we'd like to set the stage for that. We very much want to hear your opinions about this, and we want to hear your questions. There is no right opinion or no wrong opinion. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. We want to hear all of those opinions. We want to hear your ideas. You think this might be a great idea. That's awesome. You might think this is a terrible idea. That's also awesome. We need to know that now so that we can decide whether to move forward. This project may not move forward. Nothing is decided at this point. We're just really understanding what's on the ground. So as we engage in this conversation with you all, please be respectful of each other. Again, no shouting down anybody's idea or anything like that. We really are in the information gathering phase. If you need to handle anything personal, that is totally understandable. We appreciate that you are sharing your morning with us. We respect that. If you need to take a phone call, if you get an emergency text, please step outside. That's quite all right. Hopefully you can return to join us for the rest of the conversation. But if not, there's always a survey you can do online, and you can also share that with your colleagues and friends as well. So this is not the only opportunity, just conversation, to provide your feedback. There are plenty of opportunities throughout this. Is there anything else that I should mention for this particular? Okay, great, awesome. So again, just a little bit more talking at you, but this really helps. We want to give you enough information about this potential project so that you can provide feedback. And speaking very specifically to what Katie and Michelle mentioned. So in Yamhill County, this is the county itself, tourism accounts for $181 million in the county of revenue, of income. That's a lot. That is a major driver of your economy. And it's a thing where people are coming in and leaving money, which is what we want people to do, right? We want them to bring in money from the outside and leave it here. Of that, about 32 million from hotels and about 24 million from vacation rentals. This is again Yamhill County. That is more than 30% of all of the tourism revenue. So lodging is more than 30% of all the tourism revenue. That's a very high percentage. That's higher than the other communities we're working in. So you're almost near a third. So people like to come here. They want to stay here. That's great, because that also relates to the tax receipts. So these are This is the tax that is, we used to call it the hotel tax, but that's not entirely accurate. It's the lodging tax. So if you come and stay in a hotel or an Airbnb, you pay a lodging tax, and that is put back into the communities, it's put back into Oregon tourism community. And recently, for the last couple of years, Yamhill County has had more than $8 million successively in tax revenue. That's great. That's people visiting here paying this. We're not taxing residents to do that. And you can see, a little dip. What happened in 2020? I can't remember. But pretty strong rebound afterward. That's great. So we're definitely headed in a direction that encourages, that sustains this tax revenue source that again comes back to the community. So this is a little bit more focused than Yamhill County. This is the areas that include Newberg, Dundee, St. Paul, Dayton, Lafayette, McMinnville, and Carlton. Perhaps not surprising, most folks coming to visit are from in the state. But we do gather a lot from Washington. That's going to be primarily, but not exclusively, Southwest Washington. We're not that far off the I-5 corridor here, so we definitely get a lot of folks coming in from that, but it drops off pretty quickly when we're looking at California and other states. So most of folks coming to visit are from the Pacific Northwest. The concept of more outdoor recreation, and particularly river recreation, does play to the strength. So again, this is that same Newberg, Dundee, et cetera area. These are the top 5 reasons people come to enjoy this area, and scenic beauty, relaxing environment, and outdoor recreation are all in the top 5. So the idea of developing this project is not way out of left field. Like, it's not completely disconnected to all the other reasons that people come here. It actually fits very well with that. Again, from a visitor perspective, we also have a very strong local reason to provide this that was mentioned. And with that, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Clay Downing, the superintendent of Chehalis Parks and Recs District, who is going to walk us through our project a little bit. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you. So thank you for the chance to come up here and speak a little bit. I will say, to start off, I am completely biased. I am the superintendent for CPRD. I love the idea of enhanced recreation, more access and opportunities for folks. So I'm coming from a place where I definitely get to champion that sort of thing. So the whole point of CPRD is to connect and enrich the lives of visitors and residents and businesses that are in our area. And that's through open space, that's through recreation, that's through sports, that's through parks. It's through all sorts of spaces and programs. And so that's how I often look at things. It's either the location is really special and that gives you something, some kind of an amenity, some kind of access, or it's a program that lets you do things that maybe you couldn't do on your own. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I would say that I feel really lucky to be up here. I only started as the superintendent for Chehalis Park and Recreation District a little over 2 months ago. So I am brand new. But I was working prior to that with the city of Newberg as their planning manager. So I got the privilege of working with James before that and working with Brian before that, but then I changed teams. And prior to going into the planning world, though, I worked mostly in outdoor recreation, outdoor education. So again, I'm completely biased. The idea of river access and extra opportunities for folks to be able to go places and spend time accessing the river and finding new ways to engage with a really special resource is important to me. One of the other things I would say is that Newberg, Dundee, frankly, a lot of the valley and the area, the region that we live in, is surrounded by high value agriculture. And so one of the outcomes of that is that where you are, there's sometimes less access to open space areas that are readily available to the public. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just inherent because it's privately owned. You might not be able to access it. And so creating those opportunities where you can, through things like river access, can be extra important. So one of the things I wanted to do was just kind of hop into a couple of the sites that are being evaluated. I started out months ago when this initiative initially started as a steering committee member on behalf of the city. So I was coming at it from that perspective. Since changing teams and going over to CPRD, I've come at it from this other perspective. So I'm going to walk through a few other sites. I am not part of all the steering committee meetings now, so I'm a few months behind on what they've been up to. So I'm going to be highlighting things focused on CPRD. Other steering committee members will have other focus areas. So couple of the kind of highlight themes that I wanted to mention was that access and accessibility standpoint. We want people to get to these opportunities. If they can't get there, then they don't get to participate. And there are lots of different ways that can happen. So that can happen on your own through just creating something like a launch. That can happen through clubs. That can happen through instruction. That can happen through other kind of organizational things that sometimes CPRD does kind of outright through a place, does outright through a program, or hosts other programs and spaces for those sorts of things. River conditions. I felt like when we initially started with this initiative that we had a really special place. If you've heard people talk about the Newberg pool, a slow water area of the river, to me, that tends to be something that's a little bit more accessible, but there are other users that can make that hard when there's potentially conflict. But the conditions of the river itself can be pretty good for a river. Also, we have the confluence with the Yamhill River not too far away. We've got things like Ash Island nearby. Those can be really fantastic as far as conditions. Private versus public property. Already kind of touched on that a little bit. So public access versus private property. I think that one of the things I've learned since starting to work and live in this area is that private property rights are very important as far as the values we find in this community, but it does create conditions for us that we have to work around. If it's privately owned, you don't have direct control over it for public and as a public amenity. So we just need to take that into consideration when we think about things. User needs, we have different user types, whether it's on a river or whether it's for sports fields or whether it's for facilities like the cultural center here and those sorts of things. Different people want different things. And so we have to try and design, whether it's sites or programs, to minimize those conflicts between the users and the different things that they need. So hopefully that makes sense to people. And so that's sometimes what I'm thinking about too. We don't want to cram everyone together when they're all trying to do different things. They're really, that's not a way to create good neighbors. So you want to make sure that everybody gets to enjoy the river in their own way without being a detriment to those other users in that space. And then liability and recreational immunity. This one's getting a little more in the technical aspect, but it's been in the legislation at the kind of state level for the last couple of years. But as a public entity, CPRD is really interested in this. We need to make sure that we preserve the opportunity for people to use these spaces for public recreation. And there are some laws and regulations in place that let us do that. Now, private property owners, if they charge a fee or they do something like that, they're taking on potentially liability issues. And so I don't blame any private property owner for not wanting the public to come on their property because there's potentially liability issues associated with that. They have to make their own decisions and decide how they're going to handle those. As a public agency, it's part of our mandate to make sure that the public gets to have access to recreation opportunities. We're really lucky to be able to do that. And so we're in a position where we can help people get access to things through a number of different manners. So that's again, some of that public-private relationship. So one of the things that talking to the steering committee, we've got all these different sites along the river. And if you start kind of going more westerly, you're at Shampooey State Park. So that's about 5 miles or so down the river from Rogers Landing for folks that are used to going on the river. As you're coming upriver, we're going to talk a little bit about the CPRD's Heritage Campground site. It's off Highway 219. So that's something that's not currently developed. It's come forward in a concept plan as a result of a feasibility study. It's about a 96-acre site. You probably wouldn't notice it if you're driving down Highway 219 preparing to go over the river because it is a tiny little gravel drive that goes onto the property. So frankly, the first couple of times I've driven down there, I flew past it and I knew where I was going. So it's just something that we would like to have that there as a type of amenity. And I'll talk about that a little more since I don't think most people know the details on that one. As we continue to go up the river, we've got a few things. We actually have city-owned property that's highlighted that's on the south side of the river, so kind of away from Newberg. We have Rogers Landing and some of the areas near it that are right here in town, so just past 14th Street. And not too far from that is the former landfill site, and so that's a county-owned property. I should say Rogers Landing is also a county park, and so that's available, but they've worked a lot to do development on that site. There's other kind of adjacent property owners they coordinate with. If you have questions about that, I'm not your guy. Travis Pease is going to be your guy. He's one of the steering committee members. We have the former paddle launch. So that's the Dundee Edwards paddle launch. And so that is something that was in operation from approximately 2012 to about 2018. That was privately owned, but there was an agreement between CPRD and the property owners about allowing the public to do that. And that went away in about 2017, 2018. So that went away for a number of reasons. It's a shame that it went away, but they had to make their decisions because it's privately owned. And so that's what they had to do for them. We're still hopeful that that conversation could open back up, but it's not something we have direct control over. And then there's the confluence with the Yamhill River. We wanted to highlight that too, is because it's kind of an important feature. It takes a smaller river going into a bigger river. And so that's kind of a recreation opportunity area. So the main ones that I'm going to talk about are those ones that that CPRD is directly involved with. Those are the two highlighted here, and that's that paddle launch site and that heritage campground site off of the 219. So as we talk about that former access that's at that Dundee landing area, that's right behind Ash Island. So for us, that was a really turnkey area because it gave this backwater channel, no slow water. It kind of gave you something to do, a very natural route. So you could do about a half-mile circumnavigation of the island, and it really gave you protection on one side, gave you a little more exposure on the other side, but you didn't have to do it the whole route. And then also some of that property is owned by the River Keepers folks, and so they had also encouraged some access for the public on the island as well. So some kind of great things there. Again, former access. We're still trying to talk in a sensitive way to the property owners and see if that might be something, but again, it's not something CPRD has control over. Something that we're interested in because we don't have a lot of other sites and because we think there are some things that are really a need for getting extra access on the river. Brian, is there anything else from the CPRD side that you would want to add about this site that you can think of?
No, but just as you mentioned, long-term, there could be potential, it would be, ownership would be the key. I think, you know, in terms of private to public, that it definitely opens up more opportunities if it's publicly owned.
Yeah, I would say the big thing for us is we're trying to make sure that that the property owners know that the door is open and we're still interested without pestering them about this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we're trying to approach it. And I want to go back to there. There's actually something else to know is we do have property that's over here. And so one of the things we've tried to do is keep the door open and say, hey, if you all are interested in a land swap, so we can have access to the river over here for the public, but you get an area that's probably more buildable over here because it's not right next to a river in a floodplain area, then we're open to that. So that's some of the conversation that we've had with them. But again, those are between entities and representation on those. So we'll see how that goes, but we're hopeful because we thought it was a really fantastic amenity available for the public during that time period. So going to our 219 property. So this is Highway 219. That's kind of more northerly, southerly. And so we own property on this western portion or kind of western area of kind of west of Highway 219, as well as this area over here. And so this, like I said, it came out of a feasibility study. It resulted in this concept layout for a campground on what you can't see is that there's a slope here, that this is kind of an upper portion of the property. There's a slope, and then there's all these mitigation areas. So associated with development of Highway 18, ODOT had to do, or the Oregon Department of Transportation had to do a bunch of environmental mitigation. And so that's a bunch of plantings in here. So we can't develop the entire site, but as far as a park amenity and an open space area, that's kind of okay. That we can't build stuff on the entire site. But what this does have is it contemplates a launch down here. Kind of the plan that was initially developed includes bathrooms, a septic drainage area, kind of a picnic area, and those sorts of things. And I would say that to me, this has a relatively high level of detail that came out of the study and the design phase that went here, but it never went out to the public in a robust way to talk about it because where it was coming from was from this feasibility standpoint. Can we do this? Can we overcome some of the barriers and constraints associated with this? As you might imagine, one of the big constraints is just coming off the road. So through the traffic studies that were done associated with this concept, were that they would require some pretty substantial improvements associated with that area, include the addition of acceleration lanes, deceleration lanes, and perhaps turning refuge areas. What does that mean? That means you have to make the whole right-of-way alignment bigger. And so, and you have to do it not just with a local jurisdiction in their roads, but with the state. And the level of effort associated with that is more, which maybe is not a huge surprise to anyone in the room. But that would be one of the big things that we would have to overcome. And over the last couple of years, there really hasn't been much movement with this. It has also come to the attention of the district that there are a number of land use issues that the Department of Land Conservation and Development wants us to do before we move further too. So we'd have to rezone the property, change the land use designation associated with it. And we would do that all through some of our master planning efforts and in conjunction with kind of working with and submitting things to the county. So we have to change our own master plan that's for the entire district. We'd have to submit applications for these. And so what that means is there's a long land use process associated with this that's potentially expensive and that could also change some of the design that's associated with this. But all that boiled down, this is the concept that was floated there. I would say that if we were going to move forward with this in a robust way, I would also expect us to go to the public and see to what extent this kind of holds water and fulfills some of the wants and needs that folks see in our area. From more of a practitioner perspective, this is a relatively good design for parks and management because there's a lot of revenue offset up here with that campground because it generates revenue. And it's a big property. So there's a lot of general maintenance that you have to do with something like that. And it lets you do things like manage a launch, make sure it stays in good condition for something that's pretty expensive. And if the public's got access to it without a fee, then you get to maintain an expensive amenity without taking in revenue. And so this lets that happen, is that you get to do a revenue offset associated with the campground to help pay for maintaining access down at the river. So that would be more of the larger, higher level strategic planning associated with this site. And to me, it might not be everyone's first and intuitive thing to think of, keep the campground up here. But in reality, if you were going to have any substantial flooding or anything down here, the ramp can probably withstand it. The campground's probably going to withstand it less well. And so to keep it up here is not the worst thing in the world. And in theory, people could just kind of drive down here or take a bit of a long walk through a nice kind of that mitigation area with habitat and stuff like that. So you don't have a bad setup necessarily, but that's my opinion. I'd love to hear what folks think, because this is probably new.
Can I just ask a question
Yeah.
to clarify where this is? Does the Wilsonville Road come in from the right, up kind of on the right
does.
hand top of the?
It's up here. It's, I think
Okay,
it's a
and
little.
Wynooski's over on the left, before you get to eight.
Yeah, That's exactly where it is. It's only maybe a mile or two south of Wilsonville. Does that sound about right to you, Brian?
And it's right before you cross the bridge.
Yeah.
You know, Henderson.
Yeah.
I just
exactly.
wanted to clarify.
And if you were driving by, you would start hitting that down slope going towards the river before you hit the driveway.
Right.
And so it's again, easy to flash past it because you've already started descending towards the river a little bit.
How did you get that property?
Purchased it. That would be, I wasn't here when it happened, but that is in a nutshell how it happened. We purchased it outright. Yes?
So you wouldn't be able to access the launch site from the campground without getting back on the main road?
That's not true, actually, because what you also can't see here is that this section of the 219 is lifted. And so there's a road that goes underneath it and comes down here. So the road actually goes up here and then comes across and then goes up. Actually, you can't see it. It's right here. It kind of winds, but it's in
Yeah,
black and white
Okay,
and goes this way. So it kind of,
that goes under.
yeah, so that's a large lifted bridge. It's the clearance where it goes under the bridge is probably between 25 and 35 feet. Does that sound about right, Brian?
Yeah, it's narrow, but.
Yeah, it's pretty high up.
Yeah.
So zoning, from what to what?
Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
I didn't hear that.
The zoning designation, is it EFU?
No, it's the, yeah.
To, then you want.
It would have to be open space or something that's not residential, commercial, or industrial. It'd still be a light use. But I honestly haven't been with the district long enough. I don't remember the county zoning designations. Unless Travis Peace has an idea about that. But he's got his own parts. He doesn't have to worry about zoning most of the time. Yes?
Do you have any concerns about the proximity to the dairy farm that's just on the other side of the river there?
Sure.
Cause it, you know.
Not from the, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't worry about the smell as much, but in general, yeah, I think certain times of year it could be less ideal.
Yeah.
But we run into that at Rogers Landing. We run into a number of places.
I mean,
along
I
the river.
live in that neighborhood, so.
If you have feedback on that, I think it would be great. I mean, what would you say on a scale of 1 to 10 on good versus bad?
You know, as it goes, it depends upon which way the wind blows,
Yeah.
right?
So it's not something I'm intimately familiar with. I haven't spent enough time down there,
Yeah.
fortunately, but would I be concerned? Yeah, it could be an impact.
If I was camping and trying to cook my dinner and the wind was blowing that way,
We have some lovely restaurants in town. That way. But that wouldn't be the way to encourage people to get there.
no.
But it could be an impact. Are there, go ahead.
Yeah, this might be putting the cart before the horse, but have you thought about people that are paddling the land water trail overnight in terms of campers?
No, does this concept, I'm not sure about that, so would they be able to use the campground? Absolutely, it would be a hike up the road. I mean, I think ideally, if we wanted to make accommodations for that, we leave some kind of a boat storage area down near the ramp so they could do that, but then they'd be expected to hike their stuff up. That's not doable for everyone, because that is a lot of moving equipment potentially. But because of the mitigation area, we have pretty limited areas that we'd be able to develop for camping areas closer to there. It would be nice to have some kind of primitive camping that would be a paddle-in campsite, but that would be if we went into developing this site further. I think we could look at those closer. I personally think it would also be great to have something like a boathouse, so you could have clubs or other things get general day-to-day access, or hosting something like that. But we would be really limited about what we can do down there based on those mitigation areas, and we'd want to really try and think about it strategically about those paddle-in campground type or paddle site area, or sorry, campsites for paddle-in visitors, or for different user types that we would want to see being able to use this and keep the site active. Because we're probably gonna have campers much of the year, but we're probably not gonna have campers year round, and we'd really like to see the site be active for as much of the year as possible. But again, the river conditions are probably not conducive all year. So I haven't been around to answer that, so I don't know how much, but I think there would be some solutions that we could try and come up with to accommodate folks, because we could reasonably anticipate that some of our campground visitors would be water trail folks. That's a good question.
A lot of.
Okay, sorry, really quick, before we go on to Q and A, I'm hoping,
Sure.
are you wrapped up
I-
with your presentation?
so.
or-
Yeah, that's my last one.
Okay, great. If you don't mind holding for a quick minute, I just want to make sure we finish through our presentation before, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Clay. We might be bugging you again to help answer some questions.
Around.
But I want to introduce Ashley Schaefer. She's our inclusion and disability consultant that's been working with us really closely on this program. It's been really important to us to make sure, again, through the get-go of all these projects, that we're really focusing on welcoming and inclusion and accessible, open spaces for people of all abilities to enjoy. So I want to kick that over to Ashley.
Thank you. I think Katie mentioned in the beginning about increasing, kind of diversifying, I guess, your user groups. And I will say, coming from a Portland perspective, there's not a lot of water access in the city, like at all, for accessibility. It's pretty terrible. And so we find, like with this image, this is Adventures Without Limits, gets people out into water access. So I think this is an Estacada. They travel all over for it. And you guys are, in a good spot for that, because you're quite close to the city. And so it's easy for a lot of people to come out and find that access without it being, like a 3-hour drive over the pass or something. And so there's a lot of opportunity, because there's a ton of people with disabilities in the Portland area. I'm sure there is here too, that, would love to have these services. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about is just how we prioritize accessibility in something like this. This is a really early phase, and we're trying to do that different by engaging the community, but by also including myself and having this conversation and prioritizing accessibility. Because if you notice, most things around our whole country, the whole world, are not very accessible. We have the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is wonderful because it protects my rights, but it's also a very narrow box. And disability is a very large umbrella, it's everything from just having hearing loss to being in a wheelchair. There's a lot of things to cover. And so that small box kind of leaves out a lot. And especially with water access, because we haven't put in a whole lot of kind of creative thinking, I guess, into what that could look like. I think if I go back to this image, this was sold to state parks as an accessible kayak launch. It is not. There is next to it background, you can see it's the boat launch. This is about as accessible as using the boat launch. The only difference is that you can transfer onto the kayak on a flat surface, but there's still a big gap there. And you see there's all these people standing around. They had to help my friend there get into the boat. And it's also a very steep gangway to get in. And there's a lot of components that make this not accessible. And so currently there's a lot of companies that sell docks and things and they're ADA, but that doesn't mean a lot. And so a lot of what I do in my business is assessments and then design work. I did a project in Bend recently that's being built right now. We have like 5 different ways for someone to access the water and kind of choose what works for them. So I'm really excited about getting creative with water access and how can we think about this outside of or beyond ADA. There's just a ton of opportunity. And so some of the things that we're considering in that is just needs and ability. Everyone has different needs and different abilities and really different desires and goals. As all of you, you know, when you get on the water, everyone in this room probably has a different need, desire. And same with people with disabilities. They want easy things and they want really hard things, you know, and so we need to take that into account and have those conversations, and be really intentional about the design. And so that's why I'm here, is to hopefully help this community come up with something that is very intentional and that can bring in all of those people from Portland and surrounding areas. You know, there's also some other examples of, you know, people wanting to fish, wanting to do all sorts of things on the water. And then this one on the bottom, this image is someone getting in on one of those dock systems, but it is definitely more accessible. So this is an example of something that's really helpful. It's called a transfer bench. They're often this stepping kind of, it looks like steps, but so somebody can transfer onto something that is the height of their wheelchair and then, you know, bump down it with the help of railings. That's super helpful. They have all different types of them. Some of them have like a pull out, like drawer type thing on the last one that goes over your kayak. You know, that's not just going to help me, but that's probably going to help someone who has balance issues. And so there's a lot of things we can do. They don't have to look sterile. They can look really nice. If you want to look up the Bend project, it's Miller's Landing in Bend. It's actually pretty cool because it's all built into the landscape, and we tried to make it really aesthetically pleasing. So I'm very excited about that, but hoping we can bring some of that into Newberg and everyone can have fun. All right, I'll let things move on.
Thank you, Ashley. So yes, now full-on questions about anything that we talked about, things we didn't talk about, questions for Ashley, questions for any steering committee members. Really want to get into what Clay talked about. And there was a question, I think, was it you who did, someone didn't get yeah, we shut you down, please. What?
Yeah, I work for CPRD, Clay and Brian as well, and have been involved in this for some years, the visioning of our wetlands area down in 219. I just wanted to add, like, covered so much of it. Just one other thing I wanted to put out there is, when we started that wetland mitigation site, it was one of the largest wetland mitigation sites in the state of Oregon. And Brian, particularly in conjunction with the Newberg High School Horticulture Department, did massive plantings of riparian protecting indigenous native plantings down there. So we've been stewarding it, and it's already a gem, and the long-term vision of that was leading to this point today. So it's just exciting to get here at that point. And then I wanted to add one other thing to touch on the question of whether there might be envisioning camping, kayak access right there. I am intimately familiar with this whole area as a kayaker on the Willamette. And one thing that has been in the conversation, and I'll continue to bring the conversation, is the idea that that is a perfect and very desirable spot for kayakers going through the pool to be able to stop off simply to rest. There are some other spots maintained by other entities, Benton County State Parks, do similar stop-offs where you may or may not provide a little picnic shelter. If it's not overnight kayak camping, it might simply be a porta potty is magnificent. I guess book weather protected, our picture there. But because the pool is so still and because it's so long, going from St. Paul and Chantilly all the way through to Rogers Landing, it's quite a bit of work for 4 hours of paddling, especially for a lot of novices who might look at that and just, you know, come on not that familiar or fit with it. It's quite a bit of work. It's quite taxing. So it would be a perfect spot to be able as a paddler just to get out, take a break, have a rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything? Based on, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, please, yes.
I'm Kelly. I live in McMinnville, and coming from that direction, I'm curious. I know you said it wasn't a focus, but you mentioned the confluence. Somebody mentioned the confluence of the Willamette.
Yeah.
I'm just curious where that access point will be off 99, given that that's closer to McMinnville than the areas you're talking about.
I would say from a CPRD perspective, we don't have control of any areas right there. I just know that it's one that was on that map because the steering committee is discussing it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm sorry that if we portray that as a potential access point, it was, set as, it would be very nice, to have that. Our early analysis of that area showed very, very low potential for public access. And so at this point, it's more of a reference as to, kind of the upriver, extents of the consideration for this project, with the downriver extents being, Shampooey. So, yeah, we did very high level analysis of a lot of sites, or a lot of options, not even sites, and it was like, that would be awesome. Yeah, there's really no really good, early opportunities for access given the private land. Katie?
Also, at that confluence site, OPRD owns about 1.2 acres of land, and we had reached out to them, and they have no ability or desire because of the site specific itself to develop anything there. It's just not feasible. It's too small, and the slopes and the grade and the road, there's a lot of constraints there.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So the Edwards site is the closest to that area, and we did used to paddle there when it was open.
Okay.
There is a large contingent of us now, all senior paddlers, that paddle there every week, sometimes twice. So it was a wonderful site. We enjoyed it so much. It was safe. It was safe to get to,
Great.
and the access got better. The access got better and better after the bypass under that, lovely approach to the thing, and then bam, it was gone. It was so heartbreaking. So, but it was a wonderful site. We enjoyed it, and it was really great when CPR, yeah, anyway.
Shashale, that's great, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
when they were there doing their rental things, it was a great collaboration for everyone. It was,
awesome,
we
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Okay, that's good feedback, thank you, appreciate that.
Well,
Okay, yeah, please, yeah.
so I've been looking back and forth on your maps and stuff, and my biggest thing for access is putting in where, the currents aren't too strong, because
Okay.
there's a bend in the water, depending on the rain levels, it can be challenging to put in. And so like, even after I leave here, I'm hitting the river, just so I can get more experience of, because I know different sections of rivers do different things.
Okay.
And my biggest thing is people camp as early as right now, so
Okay.
getting in the water. And, you wanna make sure the access points are good, but I'm just kind of taking a look at, I don't know, you guys didn't say this, but I almost feel like if you were to go back to Rogers Landing,
Mhm.
just as another suggestion.
Thank you.
And
Great. Thank you.
cause last year I kind of like did my own investigation of what it's gonna be like. Cause I had put Newberg on my tour list this year. There's a reason why I had stayed away. Because the whole setup,
Hey, could you explain to us, please, what you mean by the whole setup there? Is it like bad access, bad current, help me understand.
not necessarily, I was really impressed. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with West Lynn. It's like lake paddling most of the year. You can paddle 25,000 CFFs, if you guys understand that. After that it gets a little, different sections of the river. So I kind of look for stuff like this. How are like get people on? What's that, so I have a lot of factors, but one thing I did not like that kind of just steered me away was the whole layout of the park
Okay.
with the boat launch. It was, and I feel this all summer long. Boaters can be very angry, quick tempered. They don't like kayakers. One thing that I know, I own the Salem Kayak Club too, so I'm constantly getting people in the community to speak up, even within our area, because we have a lot of, like people, motorboaters that think they belong there, not kayakers. There's not enough signs, there's not enough promotion saying, hey, like, everyone's got 15 minutes, I get it, but maybe have a sign with kayakers too, so motorboaters can be more acceptable. But the problem what we're having at boat launches is that a lot of them don't have sections for kayaking, so now you got motorboaters running into these people, even though we're still under the 15 minutes, it just makes it kind of the environment makes it a little intense.
Okay.
You get a little
Okay.
intense, and when I went to Newberg, the thing I absolutely did not like was the fact that usually when I put in at boat launches, I can unload my kayaks and I put them to the side, so they're not in anybody's way. But when you go to Newberg, you have two it's the worst way I've ever seen. I mean, for anyone trying to access the water that's not the motorboat, but you have 3 lanes and you have a dock on both sides. There's nowhere to even stand on the side and load. And so I was told, well, some people load over here in the dirt. But for someone that has, and I run a kayak club, so I'm around people 24/7.
Yeah.
There's so many people in my club that cannot, it's hard for them to get in and out of a sit-in. This is why they need to sit on top or their rotors or whatever, but there's so many more people that have some kind of physical disability need where they can, I mean, to haul a kayak all the way from that little tiny, like we go around, you have to like park in the middle of some yellow lines.
Mhm.
That's such a long hike. You're in mud, your foot in mud, like
Mhm.
anyone that has kind of like issues, whatever, if it's a rotor cuff or bad knee, whatever, I mean, it's just not acceptable. And the fact that you have to carry all that weight, I don't know, to me, it was kind of upsetting to know there was absolutely nothing friendly about anyone coming here with the kayak. And for me, I have to think, okay, if I'm gonna bring people here, I want everybody to have a good experience. The last thing you want is somebody to come to Oregon, have a great experience in, Newberg, and then they go up for a kayaking excursion. And then they have a motorboat or embarrassing slurring out words. And I did some research. I talked to some locals. I talked to people I know that live nearby, and people who's paddleboard here, and anyone who used that area have all told me like 9 out of 10 times they get into it or they're saying something up top because of them being upset that they're in their way.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like my game plan until something changes, I would have to limit how many people come on tour. Can't be a max of crazy amount of people.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna take too much time. So what my plan was on the right-hand side of the launch, obviously I found a plan that I was just gonna build all the kayaks and lay them out by the bathroom up there on top.
Mhm.
And then do my little spill, teaching them safety and how to handle, get them like best fitted there. And then what we were gonna do was, you're gonna have everybody at one time walk down when we can, or we were gonna line our kayaks towards on the dock. And then wait till we had our chance and go down there, but when I come back, it's a concern because there's nowhere to go. So we have to wait on the outside and hope no motorboats coming in. And then once I start coming in, they could be coming down at the same time. And I really doubt the motorboater is gonna wanna go up and give us the grace to get us out. It's gonna be a rival. So this is something that I gotta deal with, but, so I was thinking when we come back, we would just put the kayaks on the dock, get out of their way. But it's just, I don't know, I don't like the whole setup. So my thing would be really nice if the city could consider going to that mud spot and cement that. And then put cause I have people with disabilities too that I will take with kayaking. That would be really nice to have a nice launch down there for disability. It's cement, there's a sidewalk, and they have a section for fishing, like a railing or something. And I get the waters, go up and down, but like Salem, they'll take their dock out during peaks, usually by Memorial Day, they put the docks in. But I just think, and not everybody can access the kayak launches. I can't tell you how many kayak launches I've seen were horrific, not even helping people with disabilities. And sometimes I've seen the dock like here, and the kayak launch was here, like there's a huge gap, and now you're climbing in and out on your belly.
Yeah.
So you'd want both a nice kayak launch for people who have disabilities and just a submit in. And I don't know, but I don't feel like it would cost that much money to just build a nice cement slab all the way down there, and then a sidewalk and plus a kayak launch. That to me would be
Thank you.
portable than.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, but that's how I kind
Appreciate
of look
that.
at it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good feedback. Thank you. I think you had a question on it. Yeah.
Really, it was very similar. My thought was, what can we do with what we already have? I love the idea of developing that site by the bridge. That's a wonderful thing, but it feels like 5 years, maybe 7 years away. I mean, it takes a long time to have
Yeah.
something like that happen.
Yeah, fair enough.
And,
Okay.
I'm in agreement that how can we do something with what we already have?
Great.
That has river access, that has bathrooms, that has parking, that has a launch, and make it more amenable for a wider group use.
Great.
And that's the River Road area, I guess.
Good.
And so I was just gonna say that.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. And there's, okay, we're gonna go to the back real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead, that's fine.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Please.
This project is separate from the county and the city of Newberg working together to be Greenwood office land, like the whole paper mill. Is that correct?
Sorry, what was it?
Do you mind repeating the question?
So the rest
So we
of
can
it,
hear?
This project separate from the county and the city working together to rework River Road and the old paper mill and Rogers Landing, because I know that's.
Thank you, okay.
Did you want-
Being talked about.
Yeah, correct. This isn't anything to do with the paper mill problem. This is with the Rogers Landing or some of the other sites that I did.
And I think Katie or James, do you want to speak to the master plan at all, or?
So, yeah. The city does have the Riverfront master plan, which kind of talks about the middle side also, with the residential and commercial, sites to the north of Rogers Landing. But that's kind of bigger picture, this would tie in there possibly, but it's separate from the actual planning process.
And.
Fall, yeah.
You listed several properties. There's the Dundee access that we only have access to again if we convince a property owner to sell it, which it seems they don't want to, right? And then the campground on 219 would only be accessible if we can change it from farm zoning to recreation. And everything else that goes with that. Is there any other easy access spots? Like what about the Wilsonville Road? Is that a CPRD park that could be developed?
Yeah.
I would say from a CPRD standpoint, if there was an easy option, we would have done it already. But things like zone changes are not unheard of, but it takes time, it does take some money, to do those sorts of things. It's just part of the process, particularly in Oregon, which has a fairly robust set of land use laws, particularly in county areas. But we would be happy to go through those procedures. Some of what had me interested in this project, both from the city side as well as from the CPRD side initially, is there are some alternatives out there. None of them are perfect and none of them are easy and none of them are fully under our control. As a single entity in particular, whether that's the city or the county or CPRD. And so thinking about Rogers Landing with both the good and the challenging aspects of that site, is that preferable to doing major development that will take some time at Highway 219? Or is it better to look closer and try and think creatively about that Dundee paddle launch area, even though it's not under direct control? I don't know what we could do. But if it seems that nothing else is particularly viable, maybe we should really try and think creatively about that site. Again, not in our direct control, I don't know what that is, but. And then if Rogers Landing is really the one, even though it's got conflict and it's got some design challenges and hydraulic issues and those sorts of things, we wanted for our place, having an opportunity to have multiple stakeholders with fairly aligned interests talk to each other as part of this project about where really the most opportunity lies and how to develop an action plan for that best opportunity or opportunities seemed really valuable. So that's why we're appreciative of the project overall.
Wait, did you share about, so the former landfill site that kind of abuts Rogers Landing?
No, not much. I tried to focus on CPRD things because since that's county owned, I didn't want to speak out of
Got
turn.
it, okay, that makes
But
sense.
if there's anything that Travis wants to add.
Travis,
Yeah, obviously, the old landfill site is still being monitored, so there's a lot of DEQ requirements for that. Just base level, you cannot dig into that property. Anything that you would do there, you would have to put on top of or add to. So just right off the bat, there's some serious challenges there. They are still monitoring, I think, 5 or 6 wells there, which one is still producing methane, not that that would prevent access at that site, but these are all things that go into trying to get in there.
Great, thank you. Is that sufficient? Okay, great, yeah, great. And then we had here, and then we'll come to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, kind of as an outdoor enthusiast, have you considered, access for, say, cyclists or, and perhaps hiking trails as well, in the area?
Yeah, thank you. A little bit, maybe not directly. There have been conversations about development of these parcels, new or additional. And that relates to some of the things that were mentioned, camping, that type of thing. Certainly, the Newberg Riverfront Master Plan, did I get the title right? Talks a lot about cycling and pedestrian access from the redeveloped area into Rogers Landing. I would say that is not the focus of this work,
Sure.
but I expect any site development that may come out of this would look comprehensively at getting folks onto the site who are not in vehicles. And there's a bit of an equity issue there too. Cars are expensive. Having two cars to shuttle a river is double expensive. So, allowing folks to be able to access a site, they don't have a vehicle is very important, I think, to most of the agencies involved that would be looking at eventually developing. So it's a little, a detailed further out, but certainly no one's saying like, well, whatever we do, we can't have trails, you know, and in fact, the conversation's typically been the opposite of, well, if we do this, how can we also develop it with other amenities?
Exactly. Yeah, just being more inclusive.
I think so, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I spend a bit of time at Rogers Landing, both fishing, outboarding, and then I have a motorboat. So sorry about. But,
I do both too. Guilty.
I guess, so Rogers Landing, there's a lot of college students down there sunbathing.
Yeah.
Even though they're not supposed to, but you know, we all hang out down there. And then like people are still wake surfing, which is really difficult. Paddleboard or a kayak, or even just being in like a little aluminum boat. When they go by, you gotta like be on guard. Other thing is like is CPRD looking at like partnering with Randall County? Because Rogers Landing is awesome, already accessible to most people. Site, like building up its accessibility seems like a good, like valuable investment of money that's already there.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak out of turn for them, but I would, it's very not likely, very possible that any future projects would be partnerships, really, and they may be partnerships with private landowners and public entities, probably partnerships between public entities,
Yeah.
some that are focused very much on recreation, some that are not, or entities that are doing other things on the site. Rogers Landing is a good example of that. You know, there's several entities involved there. So I think that's one of the nice things about the makeup of the steering committee we have is that those are the partners that would be engaged in that. And it seems there's a potential for that. I don't want to speak out of turn for you all if you have anything to add to that.
I like Travis. I have no problem partnering with them. So we have a history of partnering with the county in different ways. They have different constraints, we have different constraints. And so through partnering, sometimes we can find a way for us to do something that's hard for them, but not quite as hard for us. Usually it's just hard in different ways. So we're open to doing those in the future if we can find ways to help each other solve problems. Because we really have aligned goals, which is, I think, part of that steering committee. And I would say the steering committee does not represent every partnership opportunity out there. So folks at these meetings know of other stakeholder groups or advocates or folks that are doing river access or land management. I think all of the steering committee members, and I might be speaking out of turn, are probably open to this partnership opportunity. We know that we don't know, but we are trying to explore particularly the low hanging fruit opportunities for those. And so the county and CPRD, we do work together. And I would say that CPRD tries to work with both the cities of Dundee and the city of Newberg because they don't have their own parks and recreation department. So we do something that they don't often get to do or have trouble doing. So we're happy to be that outlet for them when that exit. But if there are ideas on specific ways that could or should happen, those are really welcome comments.
Two other things. Sorry.
Yeah.
So one thing we've experienced down there in the winter time is the hot air balloons land in the water right outside of Rogers Landing, and that seems like a great thing to market, because I take the boys down there in the boat at 6 a.m. just to be, 100 feet away from these giant balloons. What's that?
When is that?
It's like in the fall, they come up out of the air park and then dip and then land in the field. Yeah. And then I've always thought being around Ash Island, is the sign still up? Is it still for sale?
Ash Island itself, I don't know, does anybody?
It is.
Okay, thank you. The larger part is still for sale.
Bye.
All right, paddle in, paddle out. I just want to identify, we have a co-executive director, thank you, of the Willamette Riverkeeper here with us.
The tip of Ashland.
Yeah.
We'd love to own the whole thing, but we don't have $1 million.
Melissa, do you have any online questions that we should answer?
It looks like we have.
We got some Zoom, we got some Zoomers here.
I think, no, we're good.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Do we have another,
Reimagined concept of dealing with basically the riverfront, that takes into account the mill property and those things that are back off fully.
correct, yeah, right, we're very much focused on river access, and I should be clear and, you know, share something that, the steering committee member from the Oregon State Marine Board, who is on the call with us, has helped me understand, is that river access is a very broad term. It could mean viewing the river. It could mean fishing. It could mean, looking at wildlife. All the way up to full, swimming, wading, paddling, motorboating, a very broad range. And so, we do understand that a lot of folks want to get onto the river. Typically in some sort of craft, whether that's human powered or motor powered. So that is certainly a major focus of this, but river access in general is a very broad category. Yeah, Katie, please.
I would add to that the development of the mill site and the extension and the connectivity between the river and downtown and that area as you go down to Rogers Landing, that's really important. It's just not part of this specific project. But from a visitor perspective, seeing that developed in a cohesive and meaningful way would be really beneficial to residents as well as, people that are coming to our destination. So it would be great to see that. But that's for the city to work on, their plan and whoever buys that site. Yeah.
So this is not the end of this conversation. This is the beginning of this conversation. We want to invite you all to either scan this QR with your phone, and if you need any assistance doing that, just go up, come up, take a picture. It should show a website link at the bottom. You can tap on
So
that.
just to clarify, and if you've never used a QR code before, you don't actually take the picture. You just open your camera app and you just hover it over it, and then a website should pop up. If you want to try, you also don't have to. And then on the landing page for this event, if you scroll down a little bit, there's the survey. You can click on it. And we would love to hear any additional thoughts or questions, feedback, concerns you have. Preference for a site, feel free to add those comments in there, all that sort of thing. I also have it in paper form, if you would like to fill it out now. I have pens, we can accept that now. Just have to fill it out now and we collect it from you. Yeah, it is also available in Spanish, if that's helpful to anybody.
Please share that link, the website, with your friends and colleagues or anybody else who might be interested.
Yeah, and so there has been a lot of, this went out in the newspaper, there's been a lot of interest in this. We are having an evening meeting tonight as well. From 5 to 7 at the Stoller Wine Bar in Newberg. So we'll be kind of having this whole meeting again. We actually will not be recording it though, so the opportunity to record it this morning, we will send that out via email to everyone who registered or signed in today. Again, you'll get the recording, you'll get the survey link, and that will stay open till May 2nd. So as Chris said, it can be shared if there's other interest. Again, I know people asked us as well, so people want to review what happened today, learn about it, and then provide their feedback. So that will be open again for about a week. So yeah.
I have a question.
Any other,
Just very quick, in Katie or the steering committee, I know we've discussed this down in Cave Junction where we've done one of these and up Kinsey. There's a lot of like help still needed, and so if you have skill sets like educating people about how boats and kayaks should coexist in a peaceful way, or getting input or going to the schools, or if you have those connections in this room, try to put that in or let Katie or one of the steering committee people know, because I know often we kind of sit here and say, well, besides adding my opinion, that's about all I can do. And the truth is to make these actually come to life. It's everyone using their gifts, their connections, their skill sets to do that. And if anything, like, sure, Katie can host a lot of these events, but if someone else was to do that, that frees her up to do X, Y, Z, or help work with grant writing, et cetera, those partnerships that I talked about. So that's just a friendly plug to think about your gifts and what you have to offer to this
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And also just to reiterate again, like this is just one little process, like I said, in step 0, as this project moves forward and there's the phase 2 funding of the $100,000 that will probably go into some preliminary like design schematics to look at concepting of the sites or something. There will continue to be public processes, where people are able to provide feedback and considerations and stuff again. So this is obviously not like the end all be all at all. This is again very early on. Yes.
I was just wondering if any outreach to indigenous or tribal cultural representatives has happened on these projects, because I know these waterways were critical
Yes,
and
thank you
well
for bringing that up.
traveled.
Do you want to speak to that really
Yeah,
quick,
so
Katie?
we've been in touch with Grand Ron about the project and the different stages of it. We have asked for feedback and collaboration. They just operate in a different way. It's not they're not gonna come and engage in a public process kind of way. So feedback has just been slower, but we're working to integrate that into the program.
And additionally, we are working closely with the Oregon Marine Board. And they, Janine, who is kind of advising on the steering committee as well. She is the tribal liaison that's like appointed by the state to, there's certain points in time again that will be like mandated to work with the tribe as well. So those will absolutely happen. And yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. I'm sorry, yeah, I know you.
Actually, I was just gonna bring up the Marine Board, because I talked to them quite a bit, trying to advocate even for a better site in Salem, but. Cause we do pay in species permit and pay fees, I pay fees being a guide. And their whole job is that they're supposed to advocate to make better launches, and Buena Vista, I don't know if you heard, they rebuilt that whole thing. In Buena Vista, so it'd be nice, I don't know if you guys are advocating, if you guys could, to see if you could advocate for a better. I don't know if Yamhill County and Marine Board should work together, but that might be another way of getting
The
a better
Marine
launch.
Board's been heavily involved throughout the entire
Okay.
project. They were supposed to come today, but they have elected.
Yeah, so Janine's actually on Zoom, so
Yeah.
she's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
In large, that's how that facility was built, was from Grant,
From-
the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so they're working,
Yeah.
yeah, they're working very closely together, yeah.
That's nice to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah.
Kudos.
Yeah. Thanks, you're monitoring. Yeah, Fabi's monitoring questions on Zoom, so people are probably popping off. They can probably feel free to. But yeah, again, okay, so please hop on, provide feedback right now if you'd like on the survey. Just do it, get it over with, because no one's gonna go home and do it, right? Anyone want to fill this out right now? I have pens, I can take it from you right now. We are happy to do that. Okay, great. Have pens.
Please take home a breakfast family.
Yeah, please take home.
Or be able to come on. Yes, especially if you have, there's children or other, people at your house.
School, old school.